Good afternoon, everyone. So we are starting the PowerShell to C# and back series inside BitPro, and the agenda or the idea behind this series is to brush up on basics for people who already know PowerShell and focus more on .NET and C# basics so that they can pick up programming in C#. Maybe take something of that back and apply that in their scripts to make their code more maintainable, robust, etc., etc. And I have with myself Pratik, who will be speaking later. Pratik.
Hey guys, good afternoon. Yep. So my name is Pratik Singh, and I work with Deepak, and I usually write a lot on PowerShell. And now I've started my journey in C# as well. And so I thought it would be a good idea to team up with Deepak and start this PowerShell to C# series. Back to you, Deepak.
Yep. So that being said, let's kick off the very first installation in the series. A little bit about me. My name is Deepak Singhami. Many of you know me by my handle Dextraposh. My blog link is listed there, my LinkedIn profile, and obviously we are writing a book with the same name. And but nevertheless, we'll continue to come back to our user group and keep sharing what we learn. So today's session is more about getting up to speed on the C# programming constructs. We'll not get into details into what C#, .NET, etc. is, but we'll start looking at the language and some of the similarities and differences between C# and PowerShell, so that you can associate with, you can do associative learning. So you can see you already know something in PowerShell. How do you do that in C#? Take that learning back and start writing small things. So as we all know, the journey to 1,000 miles actually begins with the first step. So this is our first step, right? So we'll start with very basics. We'll start with something like comments. So comments is something which you would have already, like all of you might have already used in PowerShell scripts, and it is provided in every language out there, like every programming language, be it Python, C#, Go. In C#, a single line comment, like you can have either single line comments or multi-line comments. So single line comment starts with 2 forward slashes, and then you could put your comment in there. And comment basically says that this the execution engine, in case of .NET, the .NET, it's not an interpreter, it's a compiler. So compiler will take a look at your code and just ignore your comments, and it will not take that and convert it into machine like the assembly language code. So it's just there for your reference. Sometimes it can serve as documentation, some reminders, notes, etc. inside the code. And it's highly recommended to put detailed comments if you're doing something which is not quite obvious to a learner or a beginner who would be looking at your code. So you can put single line comments like this. So if you want to see this in action, on the left, on the right hand side, I have open .NET script, which we discussed earlier in our session, that it's a way to interactively take the feel of .NET execution environment. So for example, if I put this comment, it won't do anything. It just treats it as comment and it returns the prompt back. So it's treating it as comment. Similarly, if I want to write multi-line strings, I would say this is, sorry, can't type properly. In order to close this, you do this, and it feels very similar to what C language has for comments, like for writing comments. But if you are already using PowerShell or have been using PowerShell, you know in PowerShell comments start with hash character or the pound character. So this is comment, and if you wanted to write multi-line comments, starts with an angular bracket and a hash, and then you could say the multi-line comments, and you close it with a hash and angular bracket. Yeah, so just bear in mind that both languages do support comments like single line and multi-line, but the but the way to declare them is different. So let's move on to case sensitivity. So as a PowerShell user, right, many of us already know there's no case sensitivity in PowerShell, which works either in favor or sometimes against the favor. So what I mean by that is, like, if I actually declare a variable called book and call it like learn PowerShell and C#, right? Or anything PowerShell to C# in that. And if I say capital B, OK, it's actually the same variable, right? It's referencing to the same variable. It's not case sensitive. Similarly, anything which you can execute, it doesn't matter. It can be all lowercase. It can be this guy can be big, like uppercase, but it just works in PowerShell, right? And which has sort of spoiled some of us. So we don't pay attention to the case sensitivity. But it is there. But it is there in other languages, right? So in C#, everything is case sensitive. So which comes as a huge surprise and sometimes comes back and bites us in the toe. Because, for example, if the same thing, if I want to do in C#, if I actually declare a variable called book and do this, and if, okay, I need to terminate another gotcha with C#, and if I say capital, it says it does not exist in the current context, which basically means I haven't defined that variable and the .NET runtime doesn't know about it, which comes as a huge surprise sometimes to people who are starting with C#, right? And let's move to the next thing, using statements. So the keyword using is actually used in multiple places inside C# and PowerShell. So people often get surprised on how it's used and where it's used. So let's start with what's like how we have been using it in PowerShell first, and then we can come back to C#. So in PowerShell, we basically use using statement inside classes mostly, or inside your scripts if you are utilizing classes or want to load assemblies. And some of these things are recently introduced. So in PowerShell, for example, let me open a sample which I have created. So for example, I'm writing a PowerShell script, right? And I want to use IP address type inside my PowerShell script, right? So if I don't place a using namespace statement, and be aware that these using statements have to be put at the very top. So for example, if you have a script which you're writing and there's like a parent block, it needs to be after these. These can't, like, using statements cannot be at the later stages of the script. Like, you can't put them probably at the bottom. They always need to be at the top. But ignore other using statements, we'll get to them. But the very top one, it says using namespace system.net. So what it basically means is PowerShell will actually use system.net for resolving types inside my script, which is a fancy way of saying it will look for these things which are not fully qualified. For example, IP address, it will try to look for this type inside this namespace, and it will find it and then it will use it. If I don't use this using namespace and I omit it, then I have to use something like system.net.IP address. So I have to use a fully qualified name of the type, and then only I can use it in my PowerShell scripts. But it becomes cumbersome to add these fully qualified names every time. So people prefer to put a using namespace at the very top and then continue using the types which are declared inside them. And in C# also, it's pretty similar. So I have another CSX file, which we discussed earlier. It's a .NET script. I prefer .NET script for things when I'm exploring, but the concepts of like writing code applied the same to both the CSX and CS file. So in the CSX file, the very first line is a shebang line. So it's just telling which thing to use while executing this file. That's coming from Linux side because I'm on a Mac. So it's telling, just ignoring that. The second statement is using system.io. So it means any types which I've defined in my script, just try to resolve inside this namespace. So system.io stream reader is basically defined inside it, so it will just find it, and I don't have to type the fully qualified system.io stream reader there. So there are multiple reviewers. The stream reader is one of them. So I don't have to fully define, which makes it a little bit more clean, right? If you're mentioning system.io by like 2 times or 10 times, it's a lot of repetition, and as developers or scripters, you probably want to avoid that. So using statement serves that very first purpose, and it is good to have in your arsenal, right? But it also does other things. So let's go with what it does, extra things it does in PowerShell. So in PowerShell, I mentioned classes, right? So if you write something using class, for example, if your module has class, it could have like functions and other stuff, but I'm focusing mostly on classes at the moment. So if you import a module by using import hyphen module in your script, for example, instead of using, if I'm not using, I'm probably doing import hyphen module and giving a path to like computer.psm1. What ends up happening is import module would only load public functions, aliases, etc., etc., but it won't load any classes. So if you have a class defined in your module, for example, in this one, and you want to use this class inside your code like I'm trying to do here, it won't work. So in order for that to work, using module and the either the fully qualified path or the relative path, or if just the name of the module, if it is present in your PSEMG module path, like it's placed somewhere where PowerShell can discover it, that should work as well. So if you do using module, then what you can do is like you can actually use the type which is defined inside that particular module in your code. So for example, the computer.psm1 module has this class called computer defined, and the test.ps1, here I'm trying to create a new class, as you can see. So this will actually work because I'm using module. So if I try to run this, and let me open integrated terminal in the right place, drop into PowerShell and say test.ps1. So you'll see that at the very bottom it says name test1vm, which basically means it actually instantiated the computer object for me. But yeah, so using definitely use this using statement, and you'll see this flavor of this statement, right? It has namespace, it has module, and it has assembly. So it comes in 3 flavors. So with namespace, you can actually load a .NET type. With using module, you can load a PowerShell module, which contains classes, and then those classes or types defined in that module can be reused by you in your code. And there's another variant which is using assembly. So in past, if you've been using PowerShell for a while, you know there's something called add type, right? And you can say path to it, and you can actually specify a path to a DLL. If you have a DLL like test.dll somewhere, you can actually specify the path to it, and it will load it in your current assembly. It will actually load it in your PowerShell. It becomes available to inside your PowerShell module. But there's an alternate to that. Now you can use using statement, namespace, and you can specify using statement and assembly, and you can specify the full path to the DLL, and it will just load that for you. And then you can use any types which are defined there. So these are mostly documented in about_using help in PowerShell. So you can probably look at that about help file as well. But moving on to how using statement is used in C#, it's a little bit different. It has certain richer things inside it. So inside C#, what you can do is you can actually, like, if you place the using statement, if you don't use the using statement, you have to specify the fully qualified name to your type and then use it. For example, here I'm calling the WriteLine method on a console type, which is defined in system. So I have to specify the fully qualified name for my method, like in this way. But if I'm using a using statement, I can at the very top place using system, and then I can say console.WriteLine, and the .NET compiler is smart enough to know that this type I have to look at, try to find these types which are defined inside the system namespace. So it'll just go and find it there, and if it finds it there, then it will work out. If not, it will throw some compiler errors at you. But yeah, that's about it, right? So that's one way. But sometimes you can create aliases. So for example, console.writeLine and using system, by default, you are actually referring to the console type, which is defined inside system, but you can use the using statement to create aliases. So for example, system.console, I want to refer it as console host. Then what happens is I can call the console host dot, sorry. So you can call console host dot writeLine. So if I copy this and try to execute it inside my .NET script environment, you'll see that it will work. So it's doing nothing, but it's actually creating an alias. So console host is the alias to system.console. So it's replacing that and then executing the writeLine method on it. I haven't seen many people use this, but it's there. It's good to know that it's there. But the next thing is actually using statement. So for right now, we have been using the using directive, which is a mouthful to say, but we have been using the directive here. So whenever you place this, using is being used in the context of a directive, and this is also a directive. Like at the very top, you place your directive and then you just work with your script. But there's another use case of the keyword using. So it's also used as a statement. So where it's used as a statement is for automatic garbage collection. So I didn't want to put that mouthful word inside the slide or inside the documentation, because if you're coming from system admin background, just think of a scenario that if you opened a connection to a database, right? So what happens is you would ideally do a try catch finally block, right, inside your PowerShell scripts, where you try to do something, and if there's an exception, you would actually like close the connection or clean up some of the things. So using statement in C# is actually leveraged for that particular thing. So in short, it's syntactic sugar. So what I mean by syntactic sugar is, rather than calling some method on the type you are using to clean up something, if you use this particular statement, it will do that automatically for you. So when I say we have to call some method, what I mean is the underlying type which you are trying to use. For example, if you are trying, in the example which I have in the screen, I'm using a stream reader. So stream reader is a type which implements iDisposable interface. So what I mean by that is, so iDisposable interface is a very small, very succinct interface. It only has one method which needs to be provided by the implementing type. So what I mean is the stream reader will have a method called dispose on it with this signature. It has to be this signature, like just dispose method. So stream reader will have a method which is defined, and if you use this using stream reader this syntax, what it will do is it will automatically use the stream reader, and if there is a dispose method, once it is done with this particular block statement block, it will call this method to release any resources, and the garbage collector will reclaim whatever memory this guy stream reader was using. So it is essentially syntactic sugar, and you'll see many places where it's used, like with HTTP clients and other places like inside .NET ecosystem. So just remember that, like, even if you are not using it, remember that using keyword can also be used as a statement, where at the very top you define what resource you are using, and in the block you define what operations you want to do. And once it is done, the using keyword statement, will automatically call this method dispose on the type you are using. So in my case, I'm using a stream reader type. It will automatically call that dispose, clean up everything, do garbage collection, and reclaim the memory which was used by that particular type, which is good. If you want, like, it's by default provided to you by the C# language. So if this is not something which is like super okay. I know why through the error, because I'm not in the correct directory. So I need to go inside here, open this guy and say .NET script. So that thing threw error because this file path, it's a relative file path and it wasn't existing in the place where I started the .NET script from. So I started it at my home directory, and in my home directory that file is not present. The test.txt is present in like this particular directory, so I have to start .NET script from this directory. Ideally, what you could do is like replace the file path here to a fully qualified path, and it will just pick that up. But essentially, you'll see that it actually read everything inside my test.txt and it's displaying everything here, right? And it also took care of automatic like cleanup. It actually called dispose method on the reader, stream reader, and that resulted in garbage collection. So that's one of the ways you can make your code more maintainable. Like you don't have to write explicitly calling the dispose method in like in try except blocks inside C# as well. I think that's it. But just this using director, I read an interesting article that it shouldn't be used with HTTP clients. So HTTP clients would be something you would use in your C# code when you are trying to hit a web API, a REST API or something. So there's an interesting article which I'll share with you guys in the README file. So all these files will be available to you. We'll provide the link later. So that said, I think I am done. Over to Pratik.
All right, Deepak. So I really like that feature wherein you used to create an alias for using that using directive. That is a really nice and really neat feature that we can use in while writing C# scripts or program. So thanks for that, Deepak. I'll share my screen now. Is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Cool. So let's start with a small introduction. So my name is Pratik Singh. I call myself as an infrastructure dev. I write on a website called ridiculous.com. My socials and details of the books which I have written are on your screen. You can go ahead and take a look what books I have written. Apart from that, in this next section, the agenda is to cover types and variables, type conversion, and what are operator, operands, and how they together form to make expressions. So let's jump straight into the topic. C# types. So types or data type is nothing but an attribute which tells the compiler how to represent that data. So when we assign a data type to any variable or any value, it basically is a notification to the compiler to understand how he has to use that particular data. So if we provide a string data type, it understands that I have to use it like a string, and if we provide an integer, it will use it like an integer variable. C# specifically speaking is a strongly typed language. What we mean by that is if you have seen in PowerShell, when you are defining any kind of a variable, you do something like this. So if I'm doing something $str, which is the name of my variable, and I'm defining a string here. So let's suppose I define a string hello. So we don't have to specify the data type. It is implicit. That means if I do something like $str and see the type of this variable, it automatically assign a string variable to this string data type to this variable. But in C#, when we try to do something similar, so I'll define a variable str for string. Say take the same string value. It throws an error and says str does not exist. This error comes because we have to first define what this variable is with a specific data type. So if we do something like string, and now if we see the value of this variable, it gives me the value, and I can use the same get type method on this C# variable as well, because C# under the hood you use the .NET classes, so we can use the same method here as well. So this is what a strongly typed language is. So we have to, whenever we are defining a variable and also initializing the value, we have to specifically mention the type of the variable or the data type of the variable. So defining the data type is also called as type declaration or type definition. So here is an example just to show like how it can be done in PowerShell and C# both. Now, in C#, data types are simply classified into two broad categories. The first category is value types, and the second category is reference types. So value types are nothing but they have their designated space to store whatever value you provide into memory, but reference types, on contrary, don't have a designated space memory allocation, but they are referencing to a memory location. Value types can be simple types or primitive data types like integer, floating points, character, boolean, with exception of string. So string is not a value type, it is a reference type. Why I'm saying that is I'll show you that by, quickly by an example. So we have this variable $str, right? We did get type on it, and we see that it is a system, it is a string data type, but the base class is system.object. Okay, and if I take an integer value, let's suppose I take 1 and do a get type on this, you will see the base type is system.value. So all the primitive data types except strings and arrays will have a base type of system.value. So that means it is derived from this class. So this defines a different category for value type variables. But for a string, when I tried that, it showed me system.object. So what does this means? So this actually means that string is nothing but a collection of multiple variables which are pointing. String is an array which is pointing to multiple other variables. So what I mean by that is, if I type str and I use an index 0, this is a different variable altogether. And if I perform get type on this, you see now it will point to system.value type base class. All right, so all the primitive data types. So for this is character data type, because we have chosen the first element of the string array, so which is h. So that is why we see a character here and base type as system.value type. So there are a bunch of predefined primitive data types available, so which you can see in this. So these are nothing but .NET classes like system.byte, character, decimal, integer, int32, int64, and things like that. So you can see that each of these have some aliases. So we are pretty used to these, like bool. Bool is again an alias which we can use. And we also try to use. We have also tried to use that with PowerShell type accelerators to typecast into various variables. All these value types have some default values on the, which you can see on the right hand side, and there is a range to these values. So that means int32 would be limited to a specific range. You cannot cross this range, and once you define int64, that would be defined with a bigger range. So you can use to tweak like how big number you want to store. You can use that, use the various data types to define your variables to store number of your choice. Coming to reference type, like I mentioned, these contain the references to other objects or memory locations. No actual data is stored. So if you do $str on a string is nothing but array of characters. So String altogether is a reference type, but what it is referencing to is an individual variable storing a character. All right, which I just demonstrated in the previous example. All reference types are derived from base class system.object, just like we saw in the previous example. But apart from that, you can also create some custom types using these different types. So there are multiple ways to do that. You can use classes, interfaces, delegates, etc. So you can use classes, interface, delegates, strings, and other reference types to create custom references. So I've taken a small example here. So what I have done, I have basically created a public class in C#, and I have pretty basic syntax. And what it does is it has various fields, which you can see, which is first name, last name, and a phone number. And what I have tried to do is I have passed this to add type commandlet so that it can be imported into PowerShell. So let's see what happens when I try to use that in PowerShell. So I'll copy this from here. I'll copy this here, and now if I define, one second guys. Now if I define a hash table and I try to typecast that to this particular class, which is a C# class, what it will do, it will kind of change how the values are represented. So if I simply represent my hash table here, you will see values like in a name and a value, a kind of a key value pair. But right now, using this C# class, I can change how this data is represented using a class or a reference type. So this is how you can create a custom reference. So this is a very basic example. You can create more complex and advanced use cases and try to use that in your PowerShell for bigger operations. So there are some basic differences in value and reference data types. The first, like I said, value type stores actual values. Reference types are memory locations. Reference to memory locations, they don't actually store any value. Actual memory allocation in value types are stack based. In reference type, that is on a heap. So you can go ahead and do a little bit research what is the difference between stack and heap, but just for sake of simplicity, I'll tell you that stack is much more structured, and all the memory management, everything is managed. But for heap, you have to do the memory management. It's not that structured like a stack. In a value type, data type, the lifetime of a data type or a variable defined with that data type is the lifetime of the variable. So as soon as the scope of that variable ends, that data type would be removed from the memory. But for reference type, it is managed by .NET. You don't have to basically go ahead and do anything. It will automatically take care of whatever you have referenced. You can assign null values to reference type, but the value type always has to have some value. Default value in value type is 0, and for reference type, it is null. When you're copying any, when you're assigning any value of the value type, it is basically copying actual data to that variable. But with the reference type, you're just kind of referencing to a memory location, not copying any actual value. So this could be also, we can keep that in mind when we are defining value types and reference type, that every time you do an assignment, it will keep copying that data into memory, and with the reference type that is managed, it just only reference to that location. So there is no memory that keeps piling up when we are continuously assigning something to a variable. So we talked about what are various types, but when you're actually working with various programs, you will see that you sometimes you want to convert those types into various types. So one of the most common use cases in PowerShell is to convert a float to an integer, like you can see. So we can use the int type accelerator in PowerShell and just give the value, and it will automatically convert that. So let me scroll down a little bit here, and I'll quickly show you the various examples I have. All right. So this was a type conversion of a float value to an integer value. You can do something similar in C# as well. So on the right hand side in command prompt, I have opened a C# interactive console, which is just like .NET script which Deepak showed you. All right, and if you look closely, there are open and close parentheses, and I've written int inside that. So this open and close parenthesis in C# is called typecasting operator, right? So if you want to typecast anything, you can put that data type into this typecasting operator, and the value on the right side would be typecasted into this data type if it is allowed. All right, so this was about float to integer conversion. If I want to do a string conversion to a character array, it's very easy in PowerShell. We have to just use type accelerator, and we have to mention a character array here, and you can see that simply it converted my string into an array of characters. But in C#, there are some built-in functions available. So not only in C#, there are these are the .NET class-based method. So any string will have this method available to character array. So I simply use this method, and you will see it will come, created an array of character for me. Now coming to integer to character conversion. So I have these integer values 97 and 98. We can do simply in PowerShell, just mention the data type here, and just like we did in PowerShell, we can do that in C# as well. We have to just mention that in a parenthesis. Now, Boolean is little tricky. So often you will notice that you often get a true or false value, and you want to convert that value into 0 or 1. Okay, but in PowerShell it is fairly easy. You have to just mention integer data type, and it will do it for you. But with C#, there is no easier or simpler way available. Either you can write a small program with a conditional logic like if and else to return proper 0 and 1, or you can use a ternary operator, which we'll be discussing later in this section. But just to show you, if the expression on left hand side just before the question mark is true, it will return this value. All right, and if it is false, it will return this value. So when I ran this statement true question mark 1:0, because the statement on the left hand side was true, it returned 1. So we can use something like this to convert our Boolean values to integer. All right, let's come to converting character to integer. So I have this character Z, and I've just simply converted into an integer using this integer data type. And that is almost similar in C# as well. Just use a type casting operator. Hexadecimal to integer conversion, we can use a format operator in PowerShell, and we can use a notation like this with 0:x to convert this value to a respective hexadecimal value. But if you're aware that some .NET classes also have these capabilities, and they provide some methods like the toString method. There's an option to provide a base here. So hexadecimal numbers are of base 16. So I've simply provided base 16 here, and it converted that number into a hexadecimal string. If you don't want this to be a string, what you can do is you can simply convert it to string first, and then convert it to integer and use that integer into a program. All right, so this was just a quick introduction into like what are the type conversions and what are the various types. Now let's jump into C# variables. So like I said before, variable is nothing but a storage location. It's like a container where values are stored. All right, and this container in C#, when you define a variable, you have to provide a data type. So like you can see in the example which I have given here, once you define a variable, you have to provide a data type, and this is also called as a variable definition. You can also create multiple variables of same data type, like I've defined a variable 1, 2, and 3, and I have defined a data type here in C#. Like any programming language, you have to also initialize your variables. So simply provide an assignment operator which is equals to sign and give a value, and your variable will be initialized. So I'll just quickly show you some examples here. So this is a single variable declaration. So I have created a variable flag of Boolean data type in C# like this. And if you want to create multiple variables at once, you can just use the comma operator, here, and just provide the data type, and the multiple variables will be declared in your C# program. Depending on what kind of value you are storing, you can also choose other data types, like I've stored a value of pi in a variable pi with double data type, similarly character, integer, and you can also create arrays or lists. All right. So please notice that I'm using an integer data type which is followed by open and close character square brackets, which basically represent it, and that this is an array of integers. So we learned that C# is strongly typed, and we have to always define the type of the variable when we are defining, like we have to provide string, integers, and all the types when we are declaring those variables. But there is also a functionality available wherein if you don't know what that data type would be, you can simply use a var keyword here and define your variable. So if I come back here and go to my C# interactive console, and if I simply do something like var I is equals to 0. All right. Now if I do I, it shows that it has some value I, but let's check if this I will have some data type or not. So I'll simply use the get type method, and you will notice it has automatically picked a data type for it. So when you are not sure and you don't want to explicitly declare the data type of a variable, you can use var keyword here when defining the C# variables, and that is all. Now let's talk a few things about C# operators, operands, and expressions. So in a very simple manner, we can say expressions are combinations or sequence of operands and operators. So if we take an example like this, right? If you take this example, x plus y multiplied by z, so plus and multiplication, which is asterisk, is an operator here. An operator, like in a very simple term, we can say a telephone operators, the ones a person who manages telephone lines and everything, one who tries to operate various things related to telephone, he's a telephone operator. Similarly, these signs like plus and asterisk are nothing but operators, and what they are doing, they are basically performing some operations on operands. And what are operands? Operands are x, y, and z. All right, so we use to perform an operation on various operands, we use an operator, and a combination of various operands and operator together will form an expression. All right, so operators can be further categorized into three broad categories. So those are unary operators, binary operators, and ternary operators. So let's discuss like what are these operators and what we can do with them. So, but as the name suggests, unary operator, means one, and unary operators is nothing but when an operator is applied to single operand. So no more than one operand can be applied on unary operator. So a most common example is increment or decrement operator, like you can see here. All right, and there could be other things like negative Boolean operator. So in PowerShell, you see that if once we define a Boolean value, like I have defined a variable flag with true, and I can what I can do, I can simply use this exclamation word operator to negate this Boolean value. So if it is true, it will return false, and if it is false, it will return true. So this is kind of what a unary operator is. Similar, the syntax is almost similar. You just have to use the syntax of C# variables in C#, and all the unary operators are almost same. So you can use pre-increment operator, you can use post-increment operator, and similarly you can also use exclamation marks to negate the Boolean values in C# as well. The second category is binary operators. So as the name will tell you, binary means two. Binary operator will take two operands to perform an operation. So you have to just place your operator in between these two operands. So something like 1 plus 2 is a binary operation. So plus is an operator, 1 and 2 are operands. So similarly, you can perform a bunch of arithmetic operations. And if I scroll down, you will see this is exactly how you perform arithmetic operations in C# as well. It also provides you binary operators also have logical operators in them. So you can do something like a logical and or. So if I have some values in this x and y variable, I can basically do x hyphen or. So in PowerShell, we use hyphen for the logical operator. So we use hyphen and the name of that operator. And it will give the respective value. So and is something like if 1 and 1 would be 1, something like that, and 1 and 0 would be 0. So we can use a logical operator depending upon what logic we are building. And in C# the syntax is little different, but again it's not that different. So you can just try to understand that in C# we use this vertical bars, double vertical bars to define an or operator. So x or y would be represented by x and y, and in between you have to provide double vertical bars. And to perform an AND operation, you have to simply use double ampersand sign. So if I scroll down here, you will see some examples as well. So these are nothing but arithmetic operations which you have performed, and you'll see that we will get respective values of whatever operations we have performed. The values are obviously similar on both PowerShell and C#. And just take a look on this. Like there is an x variable, there is a y variable in PowerShell. X has a value true, y has a value false. True and false would be false. So here we get a value false. So the same concept applies to C# as well. So this is how we can use logical operators and arithmetic operators in our programs on both PowerShell and C#. So after logical operators, let's talk a little bit about the relational operators. This is again binary operator. So relation, it basically tells the relationship between the value on the left and the value on the right. So if we provide an operand 1, which is integer value, 0, which is again integer value, and if I want to check the relation between them, and the relationship is 1 greater than 0, so it will return value true. So this is how you use in PowerShell, but in C# we have to use this greater than sign, like you can see here, to do the same operation. All right. In PowerShell, when you want to use relationship operators on string, like Deepak said, in PowerShell everything is case insensitive. So if you do like capital, all the letters are capital. So doing capital letters 1 equals to 1, which is in small cases, you get a value true. But if you do something similar in C#, you get value false. All right. So if you want to do the same, if you want to get the same C# behavior in PowerShell, what you have to do is you have to use like -C, E, and you have to do Q. So if you use like -CEQ, then it would become C stands for case sensitivity, and that operation will become case sensitive, and then you will get a value false. Similarly, you can do less than equals to, which L and E represent less than equals to, and similarly you can do not equals to. In C#, you have to again use the less than operators, then you have to use an equals to operator, and not, which is an exclamation, which is a negation operator, and then again you have to use an equals to make it not equals to. Assignment operator is fairly simple. All you have to do is you have to use equal sign, and whatever is the value on the right hand side would be assigned to the variable on the left hand side, and same applies to C# as well. Now let's come to our last type of operators, which is a ternary operator. So ternary operators are special operators, and it basically takes 3 operands as an input, and it is basically used for in decision making or to check various conditions and logics. So the biggest use case of ternary operator is to avoid using if and else. So if we have like a small if and else logic, we can try to convert into using a ternary operator, and we can have a single line of a logic. So I showed you that example using Boolean value, right, where I converted that Boolean depending upon true, I converted it to 0 or 1. So that is like one strong use case of ternary operators. So a ternary operator, on the left hand side, we have a condition. So this condition can be an expression. It could be a single value like true, false, or something like that. Then it is followed by a question mark. And after this question mark, if the condition on the left, if this is true, then this part is executed. And if the condition fails, then this part would be executed. All right. So the syntax of ternary operator in PowerShell and C# is almost similar. All right. So if you can see in PowerShell, I have 2 integer values, which are 5 and 7, stored in variable $x and $y. And if I perform, so this is my condition on ternary operator. If I perform 5 greater than 7, it should return to, it should be false. So that is why if this is false, this condition is executed, and if this was true, this was supposed to get executed. So since it is false, x would be smaller than y. That is why we get this value, x is smaller than y. And same applies to C#. So here we have used the greater, this is our condition. We have used the greater than sign, and because this condition is false, this particular thing would be executed. All right, so that is why you see x smaller than y in C# as well. So I think that's all what I wanted to cover. So let me just quickly recap whatever I have covered. So I basically started with what are the various data types, what is a data type, what are the various data types. Data types are actually basically categorized into 2 categories, which are value types and reference types. I showed you some examples using string, how a reference type, we can use a reference type like string and access the value types hidden inside using an element of that string array. Sorry, a character array. And after that, we covered type conversion, how we can use a type conversion operator, which is a parenthesis to convert various types in C#. And also we see like how we can use various type accelerators in PowerShell to do similar type conversion. Finally, we covered what are operator, operands, and expressions. And operators have 3 categories. The first one is the unary operator, second is the binary operator, and third was a ternary operator. And we also looked into some scenarios and some examples of whatever we have covered. So guys, I think that's all what I wanted to cover, and I think I'll hand over to Deepak if he wants to add something or correct me if I've. Yeah.
No, Pratik, nicely done. So I think we are good in time as well. I don't see any questions. But yeah, this was basic, like the beginner session, right? So yeah, continue to invest in it.
So we have a similar session planned 2 weeks from today. So next week, after the week after the next week, we would be having another session, most probably on Friday or on the weekend. We have to still decide that. And once that is decided, we'll also share what is the agenda for that talk. On that session as well, me and Deepak are teaming up for something similar, like a basics of PowerShell and C# and how we can use and try to use our understanding of PowerShell and use that in C# to learn, like with associative learning. And I'll also encourage you guys to go and go to this book which we are writing. And if you see that there is a read free sample option here, go and download this free sample, which is basically a PDF file which you'll get. All these basics which we have discovered is available in this PDF file, and you can go and learn all these C# primers and whatever that like Deepak covered, using directive and statement, what are value types, reference types. You can cover all these basics apart from other things which we have already added in this free ebook. So please go ahead, guys, and start your C# journey. And we are also learning as we are going. So I think it would be good if we can build a strong ecosystem and learn together. All right, back to you, Ajay.